Hello, welcome back to my channel, everyone. I'm so excited to have you back once again. My name is Mercy, and this is Mercy Posh Stitches. If you're coming across my channel for the first time, you're highly welcome, and you are in the right place. So on this channel, I drop sewing tutorials, I drop DIY, beginner-friendly tutorials, detailed tutorials that are very easy to understand, even if you are a self-taught fashion designer or a beginner. Okay, so I dropped trendy styles that are very up to date. I show you how to draft them, how to cut them, and how to stitch them down neatly. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to be learning how to make this beautiful brocade dress with front slit. And I I am going to make this tutorial very detailed as possible. I'm going to be explaining everything that I'm going to be doing, okay? So I encourage you to watch this video to the end. So this brocade fabric is what we're going to be using to create this, and I have 3.5 yards here. That is 3.5 yards. But I will encourage you to get 4 yards because um, I had to join the sleeve part because it was not up to 4 yards. So in order to avoid unnecessary joining on the sleeve like I did, I encourage you to get 4 yards for this. So that's just it. So I am going to be able to use those 3 yards to, I will see how I can manage it properly to be able to give me what I want. But like I said earlier, I will encourage you to get 4 yards for it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we are going to be working on our pattern paper. We're going to be working on our paper first, after which we're going to be transferring to our main fabric. Okay, so what I did here was that I merged my pattern paper. I merged two pattern paper together so that I can get my desired length. Okay, so I will also encourage you to make this dress as long as possible. It doesn't mean that it will be sweeping the floor, but make it to go down very well, because the beauty also lies in making it to go down very well. Mine went down very well and I truly love the outcome. So please, um allowing it to hang as a not get down very well can, can reduce the look at the end. Okay, so I went on to measure to get my length, and after getting my length, I'm going to mark it into a straight line and mark other line as well, and that is what I've just done. So this part here is my beginning, as the beginning part, shoulder, and I have waist here, I have hip here as well. Then this is my knee and this is my length. Okay, so these are the lines we are going to be needing for this dress. So the first thing I'm going to do is on this shoulder line, I'm going to be marking my shoulder to shoulder divided by 2. Okay, so that is what I'm going to be marking on the shoulder line, my shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2. And I'm supposed to measure my sleeve as well because it's a cut together dress, but as I'm not having enough fabric, I'm going to be attaching my sleeve. So what I did was I measured 6.5 inches, which will be for my cape, and 1.5 inches for my allowance to join the sleeve. Okay, the allowance where I will join the sleeve. Now I went on to measure all together what I have there. And first, the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure the wideness of my sleeve. Now note that the sleeve is very big, so that you have to make it as wide as possible. You can add extra 5 inches or 6 to your normal wide round sleeve, that is bicep. So that is what you're going to do to make it very big as possible. So I went on to mark this line into a straight line starting from my shoulder to where my sleeve stopped, and this is what you can see here. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is to impute my circumferences. Now I am going to be making use of my hip circumference, which is the biggest part of my body measurement. You get that? So I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 4, and after dividing it by 4, I am going to be adding extra 3 inches. Okay, so that is what I did here. I divided my hip circumference by 4, marked it on the waistline, then I added extra 3 inches. So I'm going to measure what I have here, mark it on the straight points and connect like this, and also connect like this to meet the sleeve line. Then on the hip, I am going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and add 4 inches. Now take note, when I measured on my waist, okay, I added just 3 inches to my hip circumference divided by 4. Do you remember? Then on the hip line I added 4 inches instead of 3 inches. Now on the knee line I am going to mark exactly what I marked on the waistline, which is my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 3 inches. Do you understand? So I'll be using this pen because my marker was not really visible, very visible, was not showing very well. So that is what I did. So basically I reduced 1 inch from what I have on my hip line and marked it on the knee line. Now that same mark I have on my knee line is what I'm going to replicate or duplicate on my length. That is what I'm going to mark on the hemline. That is the length line. So that is what I did. So I can say that the only measurement that is bigger is the hip, is bigger than the measurement I use on other parts by just 1 inch, and that is why it gave me that kind of pencil dress shape. As you can see, it's giving that kind of pencil dress vibe. Okay, so now I was done doing that, and the next thing I'm going to do right now is to mark my neck width and my neck depth. Now I am marking 3.5 inches for my neck width, and I'm marking 2.5 inches for my neck depth. Now note that this 2.5 inches is for back neck depth. We're going to be using a different neck depth for the front, but the wideness of the neck still remains 3.5 inches. Okay, so I proceeded to grab my ruler, and I'm just going to connect downward in a curved shape like this to get my round neck for the back. Okay, so that is what you see me doing here. So please, I would advise you to mark the neck for the front and the back all together here. Like mark the back part. After marking the back part, you mark the front part as well. Don't cut the back part first before marking the front part. Okay, so I'm going to cut out, and after cutting out I'm going to show you the next thing we are going to do. Okay, so I'm going to make a curve here just before I cut out. Just curve this place out like this. Okay, so that is what you see me doing here, and after doing that I'm going to cut out. And I was done cutting out, and I proceeded to cut the neckline for the back. So like I was saying, measure the neckline for the back and front together. Then when you're cutting, cut only the back, so that when you're done drafting the front part, you can now go ahead to cut the front part instead of starting to remeasure the front part again. So what I did is that I cut it out of my main fabric, added 1/4 of an inch on the neckline and 1/2 an inch on the shoulder, and that is it. The shoulder, the 1/2 an inch on the shoulder is for joining with the front part. And I proceeded to unpin my paper and set my fabric aside. And the next thing I'm going to do now is to work on this paper so as to use it to cut the front part. So now I am marking the front neckline. So this will be a bit difficult for our beginners, and that is why I was advising we mark the front neckline and the back neckline all together before cutting out the back neckline, the way we usually do when we are drafting a boo dress. Okay, so I went down by 5.6 inches. Okay, I went down by 6 inches for the neck depth, that is the roundness of the neck. And the next thing I'm going to do is, if you take a good look at this neckline, you observe that it's a combination of round neckline and V neckline. I actually don't know what they call it. Okay, I really don't know what they call it, but I know that it has a kind of round neckline and a kind of V neckline. Okay, so pardon me, the neckline for the round neckline from the front was 5 inches, not 6. Then after which I went down all together by 7 inches to get this V into it. Okay, I went down 7 inches, that is all together 7 inches. The 5 inches plus 2, that is 7 inches, and I connected the V into the round neckline. Now I use my measurements. I use 1/2 and 1/4 of an inch here because if you notice the upper part of the neckline is wider, which means that you can use 1.5. When you open it you have 3 inches. You can use 1 inch. When you open it you have 2 inches. You can use 0.75, I mean, which when you open it you have 1.5 inches. So here I used 0.75, which when I open it I will have 1.5 inches, and I proceeded to curve out this part. I'm just going to make a curve here to achieve that very look you can see on the style inspo. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm just going to do that, after which I'll go on to cut out. Okay. Okay, so I was done doing that, and the next thing I'm going to do is to work on the down part of the front, that is the part that has that pleat. So now I want to come up 1 inch above my waistline. That is where I want the pleats to start, and that is going to be my new waistline. So I am marking it. I just went up 1 inch above the initial waistline, that is the initial half length. That is what you see me doing here, and I am marking on that new half length now. Okay, so basically that is where I want my plate to start. Okay, do you get that? So the next thing I'm going to do now is to also determine how deep I want the plate to be. Do I want the plate to stop around the knee line, or some inches above the knee line? Now before I do that, if you notice that front side, the pleat on the front side, I want it to be from my half length to uh 7 inches, 7 inches below the new half length. That is where I marked, as you can see right here. And as I'm marking, I'm taking a very good look at the style inspiration, so that I can be able to get it exactly as it is. So I am going to be connecting from the 7 inches line that I mark. I will connect to the knee line. That is where I want the pleat to end. I want the pleat to end at the knee line, and that is why you see that I am placing my ruler on the 7 inches below the half length and connecting to the knee line. Okay, so that is what you see me do now. And the next thing I'm going to do now is I am going to be cutting through. I'm going to be cutting through the new half length, which is what I just did here. And I'm also going to cut through on this as in slanty line. Okay, I'm going to be cutting through on this line toward the knee line, and that is what you see me do right now. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is to notch this hip part. That is what I just did. I placed the notch on the hip part here, and I am going to make a kind of lines here, and the lines I am going to make is going to look curved. It's not going to be a straight line. Okay, so I just want you to pay attention very well to see how I curved the lines. It wasn't a straight line, it is a curved line. Okay, as if a kind of round shape. You can see it. So that is how I marked on that line, and I went on to number them. So I have 1 to 8 pieces, and I went on to cut them, that is slash them and spread them on my main fabric. Okay, so what I did was I folded my fabric according to the yardage. That is where you measure the yards, and that is why I was able to achieve a very long length, long enough to accommodate my paper from the shoulder to the hem. Okay, so that is what I did here, and I went on to place my skirt part to it, the slash and spread part, and I slash and spread with 4 inches. Okay, I use 4 inches to get my spread. As you can see, all of them are 4 inches. That is what I use to slice to spread them, and I did that all the way to the last one, which is the 80th one. And I also proceeded to place new half length to it, from the shoulder to the half length, and this is how it is looking. Okay, so now after that I went on to trace the lines, added 1/4 of an inch on the neckline and 1/2 of an inch on the shoulder to join with the back part. And I went on to trace all the lines. I traced all the lines from beginning to the end, to the hem. Okay, so I also added some allowances, that is about 2 inches allowances. The reason why I added these 2 inches was because I was scared that maybe after making my pleats on my gathers, I'm going to have shortage. Okay, so I'm also going to mark this part and notch it, and I'm also going to make a mark on the center part as well. So that is what I am going to do, after which I am going to cut out. Okay, so I proceeded to cut out, and this is what we have. So this part now, where our new half length started, I am going to notch on this part. Okay, so I proceeded to place a notch there, and I'm going to be removing my pins. So I went on to remove my pins and I joined my two shoulders with the 1/2 an inch that I added for joining allowance, and I went on to also sew my gather stitch. So you can actually choose to make pleats around here on both sides and the center, but mine I use gather stitch because it is easier for me to, work with gather stitch, adjust it the way I want, than pleats. And here is that center part where I told you I was going to mark. That is where the slash started on the center. Okay, that is this point. I went on to gather it, and on the side, remember that part where I said I will notch on the knee line? That is where I started to sew my gathers all the way to the part of the new half length where I also marked on. Okay, so here is my gathers, and now I want to tell you something. Like when I finish marking this part, numbering my curved line, I was actually supposed to measure all the sides and note down, but I didn't remember that part. Remember, I'm trying this style for the first time. I've not made it before, so I didn't take the measurement. So when I finished slashing and spreading, I saw the need to take the measurement, and I had to merge it together with my masking tape to be able to take the measurement. So please ensure that you, after making your curve and line numbering them, go on to measure what you have or duplicate it on another paper. That part where you are to slash and spread, duplicate it on that paper before you proceed to cut it to slash it and spread it. Okay, so it will enable you to know where to start your gathers and where to end. So I went on to cut my lining for the neckline, and I'm going to go ahead to use it to turn the neckline and show you what we have. Okay, so that is what I went on to do. So I open iron the shoulder line so that it can lie flat while I sew my neckline. I turn my neckline with lining. So this my lining for the neckline, I hard gum to it. That is collar gum. Okay, I collar gum to it, and I hem it with 1/2 an inch. That is what I did, and this is what it looked like on the right side of the fabric. Okay, so now I cut out this kind of, will I call it a strip. I cut it out. I'm going to use it to sew on this center front gathers. Okay, so when I measured this center front from the half length to where my gather started, I had 7.5 inches. That is why I advise you to measure all of this before you slash your paper for spreading. So but the strip I cut out is about 6.5 inches because I'm going to use it to pull this part up. So I am going to stitch it like this. This strip is about 2 inches wide, and like I said, 6.5 inches long. Okay, so I'm going to sew it, and I'm going to drag it up a bit like this. Okay, I'm going to drag it up. So I'm going to be sewing the part that I didn't turn. I turned one side, or I turned the both side of left and right, then the down part I turned it. I didn't turn the upper part because that was where I turn it inside out. And I'm going to fix that part that I didn't turn, and it's going to look like this. Okay, and I'm going to use it to pull this, after which I will give this pleat or this gather stitch a very good ironing. It's very important so that it will bring out all the creasy line, and it will also lie flat on the body. So now the next thing I did was, subtracting my neck width, I marked where my shoulder to shoulder divided by 2 ended, and from there I marked my 6.5 inches that I added for our cape, remember. And in between that 6.5, that is the center, I gummed my collar gum to it, as you can see. And the collar gum is half of 6.5 inches, which is 3.25. okay, so that is what you see me do here. And I gum it from the shoulder to the chest line of the front and of the back as well. All of them ended at the chest line, because I'm going to be sewing my cape up to from front short from the front chest line to the back chest line. So turning it to the right side, I went on to mark where my shoulder to shoulder divided by 2 stopped, and I also from there mark my 6.5 inches, divided my tape into 2 to get the midpoint of the 6.5 inches. And this is how I'm going to fold it, making sure that where my shoulder ended and where that 6.5 inches ended is, aligned. Then I'm going to sew it all the way to the down part of the front chest and back chest line as well. I'll do that on both sides, and I'll show you what we have. Okay, so I went on to sew those two shoulder cape, and that will enable it to stand very well, as you saw at the beginning of this video. So now it's time for me to go on to attach my sleeve, and I'll cut out this fabric, and I'm going to be using it to make my sleeve. So the length of the fabric is 21 inches. My sleeve length is 16 inches, so I added extra 5 inches for the plate. Okay, so and the wideness is wide enough to accommodate my round sleeve. So what I'm going to do is to measure and mark to get the midpoint of the 21 inches, which is here. And I also went up from that line 2 inches. Okay, I went on from the midpoint 2 inches, and I'm going to be forming my pleat. My first pleat is going to be start from the center midpoint and go to the 2 inches below, above the midpoint. Then the second one, then the third one. I'm going to have about 3 pleats like this, after which I'm going to be attaching a kind of band to the tip of the sleeve. Okay, that is what I'm going to do. And let me go and make the pleats and show you. So this is it. I went on to make the pleat, and I sew it on the center of the sleeve. And I also use my hemming gum to hem it down, and I also hand tack it with my hand needle and thread, so that if the hemming gum becomes weak later in the future, the hand tacking with my hand needle will be able to hold it firm. So I went on to cut my band, and the band is 5 inches wide, 5 inches wide. And I went on to hem one side, that is fold one side, half of an inch on one side with my iron, and I'm going to be placing it this way, right side of the band facing the wrong side of the fabric, and I will sew. Then I'm going to stitch on top like this, and that's exactly what I've already done that on this other sleeve. Now note that I gummed my collar gum to it. Okay, collar gum, some call it hairstay, no, some call it horse hair braid, and that is what I gum, but I know it as collar gum. It will enable the hand to stand very well, as you can see. And I proceeded to join the side after I was done attaching my bands to my sleeve. I went on to join the two sides. Okay, now remember that 2 inches I added when I slashed and spread my paper on my fabric, because of fear that it may shorten after gathering. I At the end, there was no shortage after gathering. So when I was joining, I subtracted it so that it can align properly with the back part, and I'm going to trim it off neatly and also overlock the inside. Okay, so this is what we have for now. So I'm going to give it a very good press, especially that part where I have pleat, and it will be time for me to cut out my belt. So I'm going to be using this liquid Mikado to cut out my belt, and I have just half yard. That is what I have here. So I'm going to cut my belt in a way that it also have pleats. Okay, I'll cut it in a unique way so that it can have pleats. So what I'm going to do now is to fold my belt like this to the wrong side. I'm going to fold it, and that is what I did. So I fold it straight and we folded it like this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually using all the whole half length. As you can see, I'm using the whole half length for this. Now I'm going to measure from here to mark just 12 inches, about 12 inches, and on this upper part I'm going to make use of 4.5 inches, and I'm going to be connecting the 4.5 inches to the 12 inches like this. So this part now will be wider because I'll make the plate on it, while the other part stays slim as normal belt should be. So I'm going to cut out, and after cutting out I'm going to take it to my machine, stitch it the way we normally stitch our normal belt, and on the center front of this belt I'm going to make about 2 to 3 pleats. Okay, and I'll show you what we have after doing that. Okay, so I was done doing that, and this is how my belt look. It's looking so cute, and after plating I hand tack it so that it stay in place. I didn't want to stitch it so that the stitch doesn't show. Yes, I didn't want that, so I went on to tie it and hang it on a mannequin, and that was what you saw at the onset of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to share this video, like this video, drop a comment or a question if you have any, and do not forget to give me a thumbs up. Bye.